The projection screen still glimmered with my findings when they all rose in unison. 12 executives, their faces twisted with a blend of irritation and scorn, shoved their chairs back together as if rehearsed. My voice collapsed mid-sentence about the disturbing quality defects I'd exposed. "We're finished listening to her shortcomings," Baxter, the COO, declared to the room. His tone carried that certain timbre of a man who believed he was beyond consequences. "This presentation is a complete waste of valuable time." The soft rustle of pricey suits swept through the room as they collected their tablets and folders. Not a single one looked at me. Not a word was spoken. Their deliberate refusal to acknowledge my existence felt engineered to intensify the embarrassment. "The numbers speak for themselves," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Our customers are perfectly satisfied," interrupted Vivian, the VP of Operations. Her smile never faltered as she added, "Perhaps you should reconsider whether you're suited for this level of responsibility." They moved toward the door in a tight knot. The taps of their Italian leather shoes against the floor sounded absurdly loud in the sudden quiet. 12 executives, the entire leadership team, walking out while I remained standing, hands still lifted toward the data revealing undeniable proof of their negligence. Monroe, the CFO, lingered as the last to leave. He paused at the doorway, his hand hovering beside the light switch. "Don't bother finishing. No one will read your report." He flipped the lights off, leaving me in near darkness, illuminated only by my damning presentation. 30 seconds slipped by in that muted room. My heart rate eased from frantic dread into something firmer, colder. The betrayal solidified into something sharper, something actionable. I had expected this reaction, practically relied on it. Their public dismissal was merely confirmation of everything I'd suspected for months. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a number I'd saved weeks ago, but hoped I'd never need. Pressed call. When she answered, I spoke 7 words that would shift everything. "They did exactly what you said they would." "All of them?" asked the voice on the line. "Every single one, and it's all recorded." A pause. "Give me 4 hours." I ended the call and leaned back in my chair, staring at the data still projected on the screen. The quality failures, the cover-ups, the falsified test results, everything they hoped no one would ever see. Before we continue, thank you for being part of this journey. If you're finding this story compelling so far, tap that like button to help others discover it. Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't yet, consider subscribing so you don't miss what's coming next. Believe me, you won't want to miss how this unravels. My name is Leona. Until 3 months ago, I served as the Director of Quality Assurance at one of the nation's top industrial equipment manufacturers. Our products were in hospitals, schools, and government buildings across the country, the type of equipment people trusted with their safety without hesitation. I wasn't always someone who made powerful opponents. Growing up in a small factory town, I learned early that systems had flaws, but truth still mattered. My father spent 30 years in the local plant, coming home with stories of corners cut and warnings ignored. When the factory shut down after a preventable incident, I swore I'd never stay silent if lives were in jeopardy. My reputation in the industry was built on thoroughness. I repaired broken systems without harming the companies I served. I earned a name as someone who delivered solutions, not someone who created trouble. That's why they recruited me. "We need someone with your integrity," Baxter had told me during my final interview, his smile warm and convincing. "Minor inefficiencies have crept into our processes. Fresh eyes, that's all we need." My predecessor, Tomas, had departed abruptly. Health issues, they claimed. His team seemed strangely hesitant to speak about him. When I asked for his documentation, I received foggy explanations about his unique system that hadn't been properly transferred before he left. The first warning sign came during my plant tour. Nadia, a quality technician with 8 years at the company, guided me with mechanical precision. Her responses felt scripted until we reached the testing lab. When I asked about their validation protocols, her eyes flicked toward a small camera in the corner before she answered. "We follow established company procedures," she said, her voice tight. Later that week, I uncovered testing results that didn't align with the manufacturing outputs. Equipment. Failing critical safety checks was being shipped with approved signatures. When I brought this to my team, they stared at their desks, silent and frightened. "Just follow established protocols," Baxter instructed when I requested a private meeting. Previous leadership complicated things far more than necessary. The following day, a bonus alert appeared in my company account, significantly higher than what my contract allowed. No explanation attached. I rejected the bonus and continued digging. The patterns quickly emerged. Our flagship medical equipment line had severe safety faults that were being intentionally hidden. Testing procedures were altered to mask defects. Customer complaints were being diverted and buried. "The issue isn't with the product," Vivian insisted when I brought her my early findings privately. "It's with user expectations. Every industry has acceptable margins of error." "Not when those errors put people at risk," I replied. She slid a folder toward me. Inside was a revised employment agreement with a generous raise and a strangely aggressive confidentiality clause. "Everyone benefits from regulatory flexibility," she said, tapping the signature space. "We reward team players very well." I took the contract, told her I'd consider it, and kept gathering proof. That night, I received an anonymous email containing older safety reviews, ones that had been altered in our official database. The sender's note was brief. Tomas wasn't sick. On the morning of my presentation to the executive board, I found Nadia standing beside my car in the parking garage. "They're setting you up," she whispered, eyes constantly scanning the shadows. "They've told everyone your report is exaggerated for attention. Baxter already signed your termination papers." "Why tell me this?" I asked. "Because Tomas tried to do the right thing too." Her voice trembled. "He didn't deserve what they did to him." She walked off before I could press for details, but something in her expression, the same haunted fear I'd seen on my entire team, cemented my choice. I made one vital adjustment to my presentation before the meeting, removing a single slide that held the most damning evidence, saving it for a different use. After the executives deserted the room, I stayed seated in the dim glow. The call I made wasn't to a reporter or an attorney. It was to Eliza, the lead investigator at the regulatory agency overseeing our sector, someone who had been quietly assembling a case for months. "I sent you everything from today," I told her. The walkout happened almost exactly like we expected, and they made those comments about the Cincinnati incident on record. Her tone remained cool and professional. "Yes. Monroe specifically referenced handling it like Cincinnati when discussing the concealed incident reports." "Perfect. That completes the connection we needed." Typing clicked faintly on her end. "Stay where you are for now. Act normal if anyone returns." I gathered my documents slowly, deliberately. The humiliation that should have crushed me had transformed into something sharper: certainty. For 3 months, I had been constructing a case while they believed they were wearing me down. My first contact with Eliza hadn't been planned. I found her name hidden in encrypted correspondence my predecessor had tucked away. Tomas hadn't left for medical reasons. He'd been documenting the very issues I uncovered. His final report vanished the same day he abruptly disappeared. When I reached out to Eliza, she was cautious. "Tomas stopped replying to my messages 3 months ago," she explained. "The company claimed he was unavailable due to medical leave." "He's not sick," I said. "At least not according to his wife, who I tracked down yesterday. She says he accepted a massive settlement with a gag order after being threatened with fraud charges." Our collaboration began that night. We knew a direct assault wouldn't work. The executives had shielded themselves too thoroughly, with teams of lawyers prepared to bury any accusation. We needed them to incriminate themselves, preferably on record. After leaving the meeting room, I walked through the silent halls toward my office. The quiet felt heavy now, almost anticipatory. I checked my watch. 2 hours until Eliza's team made their move. My office door was slightly open. Inside, seated in my chair, was Vivian. "That was quite a spectacle," she said, swiveling my monitor toward her, "though not surprising considering your approach." I set my materials down carefully. "Was there something you needed to say that you couldn't mention in front of the others?" She smiled that familiar smile that never showed teeth. "You know, Leona, I actually pushed for hiring you. Your record for fixing problems impressed me. But you misunderstood your role from day one, which was to fix the perception problem, not create a new one." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Your employment has been terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out in 20 minutes. Whatever you've gathered stays here, including your personal notes." Her gaze sharpened. "Everything. The company owns all work product created during your time here." "I understand," I answered calmly. Something in my steady response made her suspicious. "This isn't a negotiation, Leona. You've made enemies who never forget. People with influence across the entire industry. Is that a threat?" "It's reality. Your career ended the moment you chose to oppose this team." She moved toward the door. "Though I admire your principles, misguided as they are. Principles don't carry much weight compared to the unanimous opinion of 12 executives," I said. She halted at the doorway. "Exactly. No one will believe your word over ours." After she left, I sat down and opened my desk drawer. Inside was a small device that had recorded every conversation in my office for the past 10 weeks. I slid it into my pocket just as my phone buzzed with a message from Eliza. "We're ahead of schedule. 4 agents arriving now. Meet in lobby in 10. I gathered my personal belongings, just enough to appear compliant without drawing attention. As I walked through the department, my team watched with expressions ranging from sympathy to dread. Some understood what was coming. Others thought they were witnessing my final downfall. Nadia hurried toward me near the elevator. "They're saying you tried to blame production for design failures," she whispered. "Baxter's already announcing your replacement." "Are they?" I pressed the down button. "Convenient timing." "What are you going to do?" Her voice quivered. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. "Sometimes," I said, stepping inside, "you let people believe they've won before they discover they've already lost." The lobby buzzed with afternoon activity when the glass doors swung open. 4 individuals in dark suits entered, led by Eliza herself. Her badge was clearly visible as she strode to the security desk. "Regulatory Enforcement Division," she announced, her voice echoing across the marble floor. "We have a warrant to access company records and conduct interviews." The guard looked startled, reaching for his phone. Within minutes, the lobby transformed into controlled chaos. Employees stopped to stare. Phones lifted. Someone from legal rushed down demanding documentation. I stood near reception, watching as Eliza presented the papers and outlined the situation with clinical clarity. Her team moved toward the elevators, flanked by unsettled legal staff. Baxter appeared, red-faced, muttering orders to a junior attorney who looked increasingly overwhelmed. When he spotted me, his expression slipped from fury into cold suspicion. He stormed over, positioning himself directly in my line of sight. "I hope you understand what you've done," he said quietly. "This little stunt will ruin more than your career." "That sounds serious," I replied. "Perhaps you should share those thoughts with the agents upstairs." His face tightened. "You signed confidentiality agreements." "Anything I provided was shared through proper regulatory channels," I finished calmly. "Nothing outside standard reporting requirements." The color drained from his face as the meaning sank in. I hadn't leaked anything to the press or rivals. I had simply followed mandatory procedures, procedures they had avoided for years. "You have no idea what forces you're provoking," he murmured. "This company has survived far worse than one disgruntled employee." I smiled, holding his gaze. I'm not disgruntled, Baxter. I'm doing exactly what you hired me to do, ensuring quality standards are upheld. Something in my expression rattled him. He took a small step back. Security will escort you out now. Actually, said a voice behind him, Miss Leona will remain to assist our investigation. Eliza stood there, badge raised. We have additional questions regarding the presentation that was interrupted earlier today. The next 4 hours unfolded like a meticulously orchestrated operation. Agents swept through the building, securing servers and documents. Executives were separated for questioning. Employees watched wide-eyed as years of deception unraveled in real time. I sat in a conference room, not the same one from earlier, answering questions and offering context as Eliza's team assembled their case. Through the glass walls, I saw the dawning realization spread across the office as timelines and connections filled entire whiteboards. At 4:30, Monroe, the CFO, was escorted from his office, ashen and silent. By 5:15, 8 more executives followed, not in handcuffs, but clearly stripped of control. As they passed the conference room where I sat with Eliza, Baxter locked eyes with me. The recognition flickering across his face, the realization that the woman they'd dismissed as incompetent had unraveled their entire operation, was almost worth the 3 months of anxiety, gaslighting, and pressure. But this was only the beginning. What none of them realized yet was that by tomorrow morning, their carefully engineered house of cards would collapse completely, far faster and far more devastatingly than any of them could imagine. The evidence gathered today was merely one fragment of a far larger puzzle, one that had been assembling itself for years before I ever stepped foot here. The full magnitude of what was approaching wouldn't be understood until the emergency board meeting set for 8 a.m. By that point, it would be too late for cleanup, too late for attorneys, too late for anything except watching their carefully engineered empire crumble into ashes. And I intended to witness every second of it. The following morning arrived with the strange brightness that follows life-shifting moments. I dressed with practiced precision, charcoal gray suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back tightly. Today wasn't about presenting myself. It was about watching accountability materialize. Sleep had avoided me, but adrenaline offered flawless focus. 3 months of meticulous documentation, calculated alliances, and patient strategy were about to converge in this emergency board session. The corporate headquarters appeared different in the early sunlight, almost exposed. Security had been intensified with unfamiliar guards checking IDs at every entrance. News vans waited along the perimeter, held back by temporary barricades. Miss Leona, a woman I didn't recognize, greeted me at the executive entry. I'm Zoe, assistant to the board chair. You're expected upstairs. The executive floor was unnervingly still. Glass offices that normally hummed with energy stood empty, their occupants noticeably absent. Computer monitors displayed login screens that would never again greet their usual users. Zoe guided me to a small room beside the main boardroom. Through a partially open door, I saw people gathering. Grim expressions, hurried murmurs, untouched glasses of water. Wait here, Zoe instructed. The chair will call you in once they're ready. Alone, I checked my phone. A message from Eliza. Second phase underway now. 9 search warrants being executed at once. I smiled. Impeccable timing. From the boardroom, voices rose. Someone demanded explanations. Another insisted on legal counsel. A third voice, steady and authoritative, cut through the uproar. This meeting will come to order, declared Edmund, the board chair. We are facing unprecedented accusations that demand immediate response. The door swung open. Edmund, a silver-haired man with analytical eyes, motioned to me. Please join us, Miss Leona. The boardroom held 23 individuals, the full 12-member board, several senior executives who had skipped my presentation the day before, and a cluster of stern-faced attorneys. The 3 vacant chairs at the main table stood out sharply. For those unfamiliar with her, this is Leona, our quality assurance director, Edmund stated, or rather our former director. According to termination documents apparently filed yesterday afternoon, forms I never authorized. Murmurs rippled across the chamber as Edmund went on. Leona has chosen to present her findings directly to the board before speaking with federal investigators later today. Baxter, seated rigidly at the far end, cut in. This is highly irregular. Our lawyers should evaluate any materials beforehand. You've surrendered that privilege, Edmund snapped. Regulators have already seized most of our company's records. We're attempting to comprehend what's unfolding before the markets open, and this company loses half its value. He gestured toward me. The floor is yours. I connected my tablet to the display system. The room dimmed and the screens lit up with the same slides I had begun showing the previous day. As I started explaining yesterday before the executive team abruptly exited, I said, my voice unwavering, our quality assurance procedures have been intentionally undermined for roughly 36 months. Over the next 40 minutes, I carefully outlined everything I had uncovered: altered testing data, concealed incident reports, adjusted safety thresholds. I presented messages confirming intentional suppression of equipment malfunctions, including 3 that had led to patient injuries in hospitals. The board members' expressions shifted from doubt to shock to barely restrained rage. This can't be accurate, argued Vivian when I paused. These are isolated events shown without context. Actually, I said, I haven't even revealed the most alarming evidence. I transitioned to a different series of slides, ones no one had viewed before. These included financial documents outlining suspicious payments to offshore accounts after regulatory inspections, mapping diagrams tying executive bonuses to falsified quality metrics, and email threads discussing strategies to contain potential whistleblowers. "Where did you obtain these?" demanded Monroe, his voice rough. "From your predecessor, Tomas," I answered evenly. Before he was pushed out, he created secured backups of everything. He anticipated being silenced, just not the extent to which you would silence him. I faced the board. Tomas didn't leave due to health complications. He departed because he was cornered. Sign a settlement with a gag order or face fabricated fraud allegations. His final act was encrypting these files with instructions for them to be released to certain individuals if he failed to reset a digital timer each month. That qualifies as theft of company property, one attorney interjected. Edmund lifted his hand, signaling silence. Continue, please. When I was hired, I received an anonymous message with access details to these archives. Initially, I suspected it might be a setup, but as my own investigation validated the same patterns Thomas had documented, I understood the truth. I advanced to the next slide. Video footage from my presentation the day before, capturing the moment the executive team walked out, along with their dismissive remarks. The crystal-clear audio pulled a heavy, painful silence across the entire room. "You recorded that unlawfully," Baxter snapped. "Actually," I countered, "all conference rooms in this building have automatic recording functions for archival use, as outlined in the Company Policy Manual, Section 4.3. I simply requested access to those archives this morning, and Edmund approved it." Edmund's expression remained unreadable, but the subtle nod he offered said everything. He had been painstakingly thorough in following proper procedures, leaving the company no technical loopholes to wield against us. "This morning," I continued, "federal agents are executing search warrants at 9 executives' homes. They're specifically searching for communications regarding the Cincinnati incident from last year, the one where an operating room equipment failure was blamed on user error, despite internal reports proving the opposite." Color drained from several faces around the table. "How do you know about Cincinnati?" Monroe whispered. I tilted my head. "Because I was hired to uncover exactly these kinds of issues. The fact that you attempted to stop me from doing my job never meant that I stopped doing it. For the next hour, the meeting dissolved into pure crisis response. External counsel was contacted, press releases drafted, market analysts notified. Through every frantic moment, I sat silently, watching their world crumble in slow, inevitable motion. By noon, company stock trading had been temporarily halted. By 2, 9 resignation letters had been filed. By 4, federal prosecutors announced preliminary charges against 7 executives, with more looming. As the day drew to a close, Edmund asked me to remain after everyone else had left. "You've been planning this for months," he said once we were alone. It wasn't a question. "Since the 3rd week of my employment," I confirmed. Once I understood what was happening, I had 2 choices: become complicit or bring the entire system down. "You could have come to me directly." I studied him carefully. Could I have? 3 board members already knew about these issues, Edmund. Their signatures are on the approval forms for the altered testing protocols. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Not all of us knew the extent. Choosing not to know is still a choice. He nodded slowly, accepting the reprimand. "What happens now?" "That depends on you. The company can survive this, but not with the same leadership structure, not with the same priorities." "And where do you fit into that future?" I smiled faintly. "I don't. My resignation will be on your desk tomorrow. My part in this is done." The following morning, I watched from my apartment as news channels broadcast footage of executives being escorted from their homes. The company's stock had fallen 42% at opening. Class action lawsuits were already forming. Industry analysts predicted a sweeping leadership overhaul. What none of them understood, what only Tomas, Eliza, and I knew, was that this had never been about vengeance for my humiliation. It had been justice for the patients injured by defective equipment, for the employees threatened into silence, for the entrenched corruption that valued profit over human safety. The revenge wasn't in the public downfall or the criminal charges. As satisfying as those were, the real revenge was that single moment when 12 powerful people exposed their character at once by walking out, convinced their unified stance made them untouchable, never realizing that their synchronized exit was the final piece of evidence we required. They believed they were showing strength. Instead, they sealed their downfall. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Leona?" an unfamiliar voice asked. "It is." "This is Dr. Harrington from Memorial Hospital. We've been following the news about your former company. Our medical safety board would like to discuss a possible consulting role, helping hospitals identify compromised equipment. Would you be interested?" I smiled. "Very much so." Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't witnessing your enemy's fall. It's using the ruins they created to build something better. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, I'm deeply grateful. The courage to stand against powerful institutions often comes from knowing someone understands your story. Please consider hitting the like button if this resonated with you, and subscribe for more real accounts of corporate justice. Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. There is strength in our shared stories. Until next time, remember, no amount of power can withstand the force of truth when it finally breaks loose.